everyone. I'm Susan Cheka-Lusignan, Director of Marketing and Program Development for the Friends and Foundation of the Rochester Public Library. FFRPL raises funds, presents programs, supports special projects, helps to create specialized spaces, and purchases supplemental materials and equipment for the Rochester Public Library. We welcome you to Book Sandwiched In. We have a wonderful lineup this season, and we're absolutely delighted to be back here for this in-person program. We ask that you please silence your cell phones at this time. Our thanks go to those who help fund programs like these through FFRPL, the dedicated FFRPL committee members who curate and organize these events, our guest speakers and artists who so graciously share their time and talents, the library staff who help with our setup and production, and the thousands of people who attend each year. A little bit of housekeeping. We are continuing to require advance registration for BSI this spring. We email the registration link to our subscribers and also post it to our website, ffrpl.org, where you can also sign up to receive our e-newsletters if you aren't already on our list. And of course, you can call or email us if you need any assistance registering. We'll keep an attendance list each week, so you do not need to print or bring your tickets, and we'll continue to limit capacity and have socially distanced seating. Masking is not required, although is recommended in the library at this time. And we do have masks in the back for anyone who would like one. We will post the events with closed captioning to the RPL YouTube channel at Rochester Public Library, New York, just a few weeks after each review. We ask if you're having any difficulty hearing at any time during the program, please just raise your hand and we'll adjust the volume. To access the induction loop in the auditorium, please set your hearing aid to the T switch. And we thank you for helping to make it possible for us to present in-person events while keeping everyone safe during the ongoing pandemic. Today's review is of Betrayal, the Final Act of the Trump Show by Jonathan Karl. Since we always try to share information on relevant resources at these events, I wanted to remind everyone that in the past, many libraries have served as voting sites, including Central Library, several of the branches, as well as a few of the town libraries. And of course, you can check the Monroe County polling site for information on upcoming elections and voting locations at monroecounty.gov/election sites. You should also be aware that on the library website, rockcitylibrary.org, under the tab at the top that says Collections, you can select Federal Depository Library Program, which is an extensive online resource of U.S. government resources from the compilation of presidential documents released by the White House press secretary to an analysis and interpretation of the Constitution of the United States of America, as well as census data and a current occupational outlook handbook. As the slogan so accurately states, the library offers more than you think. Our reviewer today is Sandy Shapiro, Senior Litigation Counsel for the firm Forsyth, Howe, O'Dwyer, Kalb, and Murphy. Sandy is also a longtime member of the Book Sandwiched In Committee, and I ask that you please join me in welcoming him to our podium. Sandy.
The book is Betrayal by Jonathan Karl, K-A-R-L, and 342 pages. Not a dull page in the book. I'm going to give a review in 4 parts. The first is the author. The second is the book. The third is the election. And fourth will be questions for people from the audience. Has anyone read this book? 1, 2. Well, good. It's complicated, and if I get any questions that I can't answer, I'll refer them to you. Okay. First, the author. Jonathan Karl is the chief Washington correspondent with ABC News. He is a man of power in Washington, I can tell you that. He was co-anchor of This Week with George Stephanopoulos, and he covers the White House, Capitol Hill, Pentagon, and the State Department. He's the former president of the White House Correspondents Association. He has personal access to everyone who is anyone in New York, and he has everyone's who's anyone their personal phone number, and including Donald Trump. And Donald Trump returns his calls, always. If you're a Vassar grad, Jonathan Karl was a Vassar grad 1990. Interesting. His writing is brilliant and riveting. If you start it, you won't stop it, and you'll go right through it, I think. No? Let's go to the book. Betrayal should be read for the political education of everyone, an American. You'll learn how tenuously the U.S. democracy is held together by complicated laws and changeable regulations, and how it nearly fell apart in the last election, and how important it is to think when you vote. I can't emphasize that enough. But for those who are pressed for time, flip open to chapter 13, page 230 to 235, just 5 pages, and you will understand how close our democracy came in the last election to irreversible chaos in the last presidential election. As to the title of the book, read chapter 19, Exile in Mar-a-Lago, to fully appreciate the bitterness and resentment of Donald Trump. Now, I'm not here to defend or accuse Donald Trump. I'm giving a book review. It's not my opinions about anybody, especially toward Vice President Pence, whom Trump called a coward. And when January 6 protesters built a gallows on the Capitol grounds and shouted, "Hang Mike Pence." Why? Because Mike Pence didn't do what Trump wanted him to. He wanted him to withhold giving up the results of the election. Pence is an attorney, and he knew he couldn't do that. Delivering up the results of all of the states to the federal agency that would declare the winner was what Trump wanted him to do. If you recall, the first impeachment of Trump, the charge was Trump's attempt to pressure Ukrainian President Zelensky to dig up dirt on Joe Biden's son. Trump called Putin, at the time, a genius and savvy. Resentment of Donald Trump, especially. At the election, there's a chapter called The Great Mirage, pages 124 and after, about 6 or 8 pages. And I'm going to read a few lines from that chapter. I think I'm not going to read it straight through, but I've picked out some lines. As the vote was tabulated in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, Trump's lead was shrinking. The decisive national victory he thought he had at 10 p.m. was fading like a mirage. Election officials in Pennsylvania, which still had more than 2 million votes to count. Now, the total electorate they thought was about 60 million people. And actually, the total voting was closer to 70. So when you hear that Trump's attorneys get ousted in arguing a motion for the Trump, when you're an attorney, you have the burden of proof if you're making the motion or seeking some relief. And it surprised me, the judges never said to the attorneys who were representing, who were actually clowns. Trump did not get top professional advice toward the end of the election, and it surprised me that no judge ever said to one of Trump's attorneys, you have a lot of papers in front of you, counselor. Can you give me the name and address of anyone that you know of who actually changed the ballots? No. They never asked that question, but you have a burden, the attorney has the burden of proof to show, he would have had to show that, plus that the change in the ballots affected the outcome. Well, it's nonsense. Affecting the outcome of 60 or 70 million people voting in the United States, in any event, that all of his attorneys got shot down by the courts and they stopped making motions. At about midnight, a clearly inebriated Rudy Giuliani showed up in the map room. He had been at a party upstairs with a small entourage of assistants, clearly enjoying himself. As he walked into the map room, Trump's political advisors were reeling from the Fox News projection on Arizona and watching their lead slip away. Giuliani announced nobody in particular at this time. It was time for President Trump to give a speech saying he had won the election. He should go out there and declare victory, Giuliani said to the group. If he doesn't, they'll steal it from us. Trump was told the cold, hard truth. He was in danger of losing. He was told he still had a chance to win, but with the way the vote was coming in, there was a real chance he would lose. Instead of yelling, he quietly looked at his political team and told them they were wrong. These were the very people who had told him he would win if more than 65 million people voted for him. Now they were telling him he might lose, even though it looked certain that he would get far more than 65 million votes. The real incitement began at 2:30 in the morning on election night. With votes still being counted across the country and no winner yet projected, Trump declared the entire election a fraud. He declared victory. He made entirely unsubstantiated claims about the election being stolen. And then he made his most outrageous claim. Quote, "We'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court," he said. "We want all voting to stop. We don't want them to find any ballots at 4 o'clock in the morning and add them to the list." His lead was slipping away. Before he stopped speaking, he declared victory one more time. "We will win, and as far as I'm concerned, we already have won it." He had made wild claims in the past about election fraud, but now he was telling a deeply divided country he was somehow going to get the Supreme Court to force the states to stop counting votes. The president can say whatever he wants to say, and this is Karl talking to one of his aides. "The president can say whatever he wants to say at his party in the East Room," I said when anchor George Stephanopoulos turned to me after the speech. But he has no power to stop the counting of the vote, and the Supreme Court is not going to stop the counting of the votes in law for doing this. As bad as the events of January 6 were, Trump had lit the fire that led to them. On election night, it's not overly dramatic to say the survival of the republic had been put at risk, or that our democracy may have ultimately been saved by a combination of Donald Trump's incompetence and the actions of a disparate group of people, some famous, some unknown, who stopped him. Well, the election, which the book calls The Great Mirage, on, as I say, page 124 and after, and those lines are that. Now, I've read several books about Trump, on Trump, and I'll send and listen to some of the speeches. I'm going to end with this. Anything critical of Trump, anything, is met with 4 adjectives. It's a fraud. It's a hoax. It's rigged. It's stolen. Everything bad that he had to realize, he used the same 4 adjectives through everything. Now, of course, news reporters were special. They were called using alternative facts. Using alternative facts are lies. But he called all news reporters corrupt, scum, the worst human beings you'll ever meet. And they were engaged in fake news.